Hey everyone, my name is Jose and this is my in-depth review of the Nubia RedMagic 6R. So let's get started. Unboxing the RedMagic 6R was sort of a disappointing experience for me because I would have thought there would have been a gamer-focused unboxing presentation, but there wasn't. The only gamer-related theme is the box itself and the accessories, which have a red and black color focus. In the box, there is the phone, a phone case, a 30-watt charger, a charging cable, a SIM2 ejector, and a USB-C to 3.5mm jack adapter. I don't know, but I thought this unboxing presentation would be similar to what is seen with a OnePlus device or Poco phone, which you could say are performance enthusiast phones, and their unboxing presentation reflects that, but not this phone. Now, onto the basic overview of the phone. It has a 6.67-inch 1080p 144Hz 10-bit OLED display. It has a battery capacity of 4200 mAh. It has a Snapdragon 888. It comes in either 128 or 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. It has an in-display optical fingerprint reader. It does not have an IP rating. And for the cameras, we have 4 with a 64 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultrawide, 2 megapixel macro, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. And the selfie shooter is 16 megapixels. I have the Mercury color variant. It's a 2021 release date phone with an original price of $500 US. Since it's a gaming phone, you can expect software to reflect that experience. It has RedMagic OS, which is a very gamer aesthetic and featured Android skin. And I'm very glad it has enthusiast levels of features. To start, icons in the settings app are pretty vibrant because of the display, and the simplicity style of the icons themselves remind me of HUD elements that you would see on other games and pieces of software, but the icons themselves do not have a gamer tone to them. The gaming-oriented features aren't in the settings app itself, but 2 quick things I found to be cool is that you can control the bitrate and quality of the screen recorder for you to post your awesome game clutch moments. And there's a section where the phone explains to you how your 6R keeps its performance optimized whenever you need it the most. Along with the settings app, the skin itself just screams gamer. The default icons have a cyber metallic look to them, but at least they're not obnoxious to look at in my opinion. The quick settings in the notification shade appropriately match the phone's aesthetic, so that's cool, and you can even change the refresh rate within the quick settings. And that is reflected in the status bar. Pretty neat. Also, when you put the brightness near to its max setting, the whole bar goes yellow and you get warned about your power consumption. I think it's cool that this can serve a reminder to you about preserving battery life, but I also think others might have an issue with this because that prompt kind of looks like an annoying warning, but I digress right there. The launcher is okay, and there's a lot of different wallpapers you can apply, especially for the always-on display. There's also plenty of unlock animations whenever you use the fingerprint sensor, so I guess that's cool. There's other gaming-related features, but I'll be discussing that once we transition into performance later on in the video. Even at a $500 phone, I was kind of expecting to see a few bloatware apps, because I'm unfamiliar with Nubia or ZTE as a brand, but I'm glad to report that the RedMagic 6R is bloatware free, though there is one app I would consider to be bloatware, and that is the default browser. It's called Nextword Browser, and you'll see plenty of annoying notifications about news events from Yahoo News. And my advice to you is to disable the app because you can't uninstall it, Otherwise, you'll see frequent notifications about random Florida people news. Now, onto the display, which I could also consider to be a main selling point about this phone. It's a 6.67 inch, 1080p, 144Hz, 10-bit OLED display, and I have a lot of good things to talk about it. To start, it's a really nice looking display, probably even better than something like the OnePlus 8 when I reviewed that phone. I'm not sure if it's because it's a 10-bit display or if it's something else. It looks really good, and I'd say its good color calibration is what makes me like it a lot. It has a peak brightness of 770 nits on auto brightness settings, and outdoor usage visibility is good, but yeah, there are brighter phones out there. I won't forget to mention that the screen has a refresh rate of 144Hz, which is just overkill for a smartphone because I would say that 120Hz should be good enough, but you can't forget that this is a gaming phone and frames win games. I'll talk about the refresh rate later in the video in the performance section, but yeah, a 144Hz OLED display that looks and acts responsive, especially with that 360Hz touch sampling rate. Onto the color, I have the Mercury variant, with the other one being Cosmos. I think both variants look alright, and I don't have a preference between either one. The only thing is that the back of the phone is a matte silicone filling material, which is comfortable to hold, but also gets fingerprints very easily. Not a problem, but I guess this phone is always going to have fingerprints because you be gaming pretty often on here. Since we're talking about the look of the phone, I want to mention its form factor because it would be important to mention how its shape makes sense for what it is. A gaming phone. The phone has a boxy design, but its edges are curved so that your hands can grip the phone without any discomfort. All of the sides of the phone have a nice metal finish that feels very smooth, and this is especially noticeable when the bottom and top sides of the phone are similar, if not the same dimensions. So the phone feels uniform when you hold it horizontally with its flat design, and it makes gaming comfortable. There's only two things I don't like about the design. First is the camera bump, and second is the position of the speaker. So the camera bump is big, yeah, but it doesn't belong on a gaming phone because it can get in the way when you hold the phone horizontally. I personally did not have an issue with the camera bump, but I would imagine other people might. The second issue I have with the phone is where the speaker is located. I cannot hold this phone horizontally without covering the speaker with my palm. I really don't know why it was designed like that, but I really hate that it's this way. If the SIM card slot and the speaker were to change places, I wouldn't have this problem. Also on the topic of the speaker, next is the speaker quality. It has a mono speaker at the bottom of the phone, and it disappoints me that a gaming phone does not have stereo speakers to give you a surround sound of where your opponents are in your battle royale games. So that gaming immersion isn't here. Even so, this speaker is average and gets loud, but I thought it would be louder. Speaker clarity seems to be good when around 75% volume. Since we're on the topic of audio, the 6R does not have a headphone jack, which is just completely stupid because headphones give us better clarity and isolation of audio than speakers do, and it just sucks that this phone does not have a headphone jack, nor does it have stereo speakers. But not to fret, an adapter is included in the box, and I can appreciate that it keeps the same color theme as the charger, but the adapter is pretty cheap. The sound quality is okay, but it's not resolving enough in my opinion. If this concerns you, then I'd say use this adapter, which I've been using for over a year now and is a pretty good substitute. It resolves the audio better, but not like miles better, just enough for me to recommend it. Haptics on the phone are fine, but I was expecting better feeling haptics on a gaming phone. It reminds me of the Poco X3 Pro, but it's stronger and has a little bit more of a buzzy noise to it. It's fine, it just needs to be better. Battery usage and charging on the RedMagic 6R are pretty good. It has a 4200 mAh battery, which is reasonably big, but it should have at least the same battery capacity as the other RedMagic 6 phones, which have a capacity of 5050 mAh. At least charging is fairly quick at 30-watt charging. If you use this phone at 144 Hz, you can expect a full day's use with some slight competitive gaming included in there. But I would imagine users of the 6R game frequently. So bring a charger with you. Next, we have performance, which is important for a phone like this. And it has a Snapdragon 888, which is not a surprise, but yeah, you kind of need flagship performance in order for a competitive experience. COD Mobile at max settings with the FPS set to 60 gave me no issues at all. I thought there would be some optimizations and compatibility so that the game could run at 144 Hz, but it only goes up to 90 Hz, and 90 FPS gameplay was good overall. Next game is Honkai Impact III, which ran perfectly fine at max settings with the frame rate set to 90 FPS. Pretty nice stuff to see for Honkai Impact III. I know I just covered COD Mobile and Honkai, but since this is a gaming phone, I felt like I should cover a few more games. So I wanted to try out what 144 Hz gaming looked like, so I tried that out with Real Racing 3. And performance was stable at 144 FPS all the time. The only thing is that this game doesn't have different graphics quality settings, so I guess you can think of this gameplay as a combination of high and medium quality settings, but overall it was cool to see it play out at 144 FPS. The next game I tested was Shadowgun Legends, and I saw the frame rate fluctuate a lot around 60 through 85 FPS on the ultra settings, and medium settings gave me that smooth 120 FPS. The last game I tested is Genshin Impact, because if anyone knows anything about Genshin Impact on mobile, it's that it is one of the hardest games to run on Android and iOS phones. To test the phone to its limits, I put the graphics quality at medium and saw around 60 FPS with some frame drops to 50 FPS. At the highest settings, I get mid-50s, but it can drop to around 45 FPS when combating enemies and have some dips to 20 FPS. Since I'm talking about games and performance, I want to talk about what makes RedMagic OS suitable for gaming, and that is GameSpace. GameSpace is a library that shows all the games on your phone, but it's also feature-rich that makes competitive gaming better. To access GameSpace, you would need to click the Quick Settings icon that's in the Notifications Quick Settings menu. And you just pick a game you want to play, and you access its menu by swiping left twice on the right side. Most 6R users should find themselves using the menu pretty often, because there's plenty of useful features on there. Just to name these features quickly, you can change your screen's refresh rate, have an active FPS counter, set up a crosshair with different color and style options, record your gameplay, take a screenshot, block notifications and calls, access communications app like Discord, change your brightness, monitor system performance, and there's plenty of other features that I find to be useful while gaming. The only thing I would have wanted to see is to monitor system temperatures, because this phone can get hot with some games running on max settings, and it's super noticeable. If you want to maintain near 60 FPS with something like Genshin Impact at high settings, then you should probably enable charge pass-through, which makes the phone supply its power from the charger and not the battery, which should help maintain keeping its temperatures lower than usual. There's also a cooler accessory for the phone, and I'd say only get it if you experience the phone getting hot. A really cool feature on this phone are the capacitive shoulder triggers, which act like controller buttons. All you have to do is set them up in your game, and you'll be able to use them to aim down slides or be your brake and accelerator. It's pretty responsive with a 400 Hz touch sampling rate and a latency of 8.3 milliseconds, which isn't slow at all. Overall, the menu system is very versatile, and I'm very sure other users would like it too. To end off performance, my Geekbench score for single core was 1100, and multi-core was 3623. My Vulkan score was 4163, and performance is very solid on the 6R. Finally, we have the cameras with a 64 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, 2 megapixel depth sensor with a 16 megapixel selfie shooter. And I'm surprised that these take better photos than something like the Poco X3 Pro, because I thought they were going to be the same. The wide camera is 64 megapixels, and I was surprised with the amount of dynamic range it has. These photos are a lot more punchy than I thought they were going to be, because I thought they were going to be neutral looking. I'm very satisfied with these results. White balance is also pretty good overall with good sharpness. Portraits are assisted by the 2 megapixel depth sensor, and they have good depth estimation with a good amount of bokeh blur that makes the photos look good. Night photos look okay on their own because I thought they were going to be bad. But they have good dynamic range in the dark, especially with the sensor having OIS. This can be improved with night mode, and the photos have a good amount of detail, but they can still look soft in some scenes. Video on the main camera is still pretty good because it keeps those punchy colors. Night video is also pretty okay, and I'm just not really surprised by it. Next, we have the 8 megapixel ultra wide with an 120 degree field of view, and it's kind of a hit or miss, because some photos would look okay and others would just struggle with exposure. But it looks like these photos try to be punchy like the main camera, so I like that. Night photos are also pretty bad, but there's also no option for night mode on the ultra-wide camera. There's also no option to record ultra-wide video, and I'll talk about why I hate the camera app later. Next, we have the 2 megapixel macro camera, and it's on par with everything else. I guess these photos are just alright. There's also AI scene detection, and the recognition works fairly well, but the photos just look too saturated in some scenes. The only thing I like about the adjustments is how it changes the sky to a vivid blue, but that's about it. I would probably keep the AI mode turned off unless the sky is in my scene. Finally, we have the 16 megapixel selfie shooter, and it automatically applies skin softening even though I had it turned off, and it can struggle with exposure at times. Now, something I really hate about this camera app is the design. Once you look at it, you can see it's very iOS inspired. But the thing I hate the most is the position of the different modes. It's below the shutter button, and it's very close to the navigation buttons that I've accidentally pressed out of the camera app because they're just so close to each other. Just move the modes above the shutter button. There's plenty of space there. The camera app also feels really lazy with its UI, like it's really boring. And this icon for Smart Photo is a clone of Live Photo for an iOS device. Really uninspiring. So are the additional modes, which are really boring like their UI. But the thing I hate the most is that they treat the ultrawide camera like a hidden feature. In the main camera mode, there is no option to switch to the ultrawide camera. Like, what? Who designed this mode? If you want to use the ultrawide camera, you have to switch to the pro mode. And yeah, there's no option to use the ultrawide camera for video mode. To sum up the cameras, they're okay, but it's just that the camera app is bad. Like, it's really dumb. Now here comes the part of the video where things get a little bit interesting. I'm here to report some investigative journalism about this phone. So let's get started. So as cool as this gaming phone is, we kind of have to talk about its siblings because we kind of have an 8T situation here. Before the 6R, which came out in May, we had the RedMagic 6 and 6 Pro, which came out in March. They also have a Snapdragon 888, but they also have a bigger battery at 5050 milliamp hours, a headphone jack, stereo speakers, faster charging at 66 watts, a 165 Hz screen, and a cooling fan built into the phone to top it all off. Besides some minor camera differences, which really isn't that important, the standard RedMagic 6 model is $100 more expensive than the 6R, and you get a few additional features that seem worth it. Alright, but I'm not done. There's also the RedMagic 6S Pro, which came out in September, and it has the same specs as the normal 6 models, except it has a Snapdragon 888 Plus, which is the overclocked version of the chip. Do you see where I'm going with this? The 6S Pro is priced pretty similarly around that $650 and $700 mark, and everything else was kept the same. And it's kind of weird that there's a 6S Pro, but there's no regular 6S as far as what I'm concerned with Nubia's press releases about this model. What I'm trying to say is that while all the other models are good and are pretty competitively priced for what they are, I feel like the 6R should have been more linearly spec'd like the rest. Yeah, it has a 144 Hz screen, and that's plenty for a phone, but it doesn't have a headphone jack, it doesn't have stereo speakers, the battery could have been bigger, and these alone made me rethink about this phone being a complete gaming phone package, because it's not without these features. I'm glad it has shoulder triggers and a Snapdragon 888 and other things, but do these shortcuts make sense for this phone to exist? Unfortunately, yes, because if you spec'd out the 6R to be more linear like the others, you would just have a base RedMagic 6 model. Seriously. So the 6R needed to be different than the base RedMagic 6 model. So it had to make some pretty harsh compromises in order for it to do that. If you ask me, this is a great phone for $500, and it helps that it's discounted right now for $400. But it just still sucks that it had to make the compromises that it did, because it sort of takes away from that complete experience that you would see on the higher end models, like the RedMagic 6 and 6 Pro, which is just essentially the same phone at this point. Although this isn't exactly an AT situation, where the 6R doesn't have better specs than the most premium models, like how the AT did, It just reminds me of how the 8T was in a weird position to exist, just like how this 6R is in a weird position to exist because of the compromises it makes compared to the other more premium models. To end this video off, this phone is seriously good for a lot of reasons that pertain to its performance and usability as an affordable gaming phone. A lot of things about this phone make it a competitive gaming device, from RedMagic OS to its shoulder triggers to its refresh rate and just about everything about it. The only thing is that the compromises it makes are weird for a gaming phone overall, but you have to understand why these compromises exist in the first place. It's because of the other models. If it didn't make the compromises that it did, it would be too close to the RedMagic 6, which is a better phone than this one. By the time this video goes up, the RedMagic 7 series of phones should be announced in China, and while I am interested in seeing if they bring anything new to the table, I just hope that they make the models of phones more distinguishable and unique from each other, because I don't want another 8T, or should I say 6R, situation. If you enjoyed this review, then please give me a like, and if you didn't like what you see, then you're gonna make the RedMagic waifu sad. Yeah, that's a thing because gamers. And I hope you stay around because I'm planning on a video that's about smartphone photography, and I think that'll be quite interesting. So yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video because it was a really in-depth review of the 6R, which is weird because, I don't know, I feel like this video has gone on long enough for a gaming phone. I really don't know, okay? And if I ever do another RedMagic video, well, pretty much they'll be the same anyways. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you again in the next video. Please subscribe, okay? Subscribe. Okay. Bye-bye.